Hello everyone and welcome back to another Warno preview video. Today we're gonna jump into the Nemesis 3 preview on this test build, and they should come around soon. And 157th Motostrelki division is what we start with, as this is the first Soviet reserve division that we get in the game. And that is pretty exciting because that comes with a couple of really old toys and a couple of really new toys actually. So that should fit this game quite nice, and I'm looking forward to playing this division a lot. It's my favorite out of the two, and we will get to why that is in a second. But let's start, as always, with the logistics tab here, where we have Urals, we have Gras, we have Mi-6, so decent supply, all that you can want outside of a really cheap supply truck. Belozors, BTR 40Bs, and the Stadion here. Really clunky looking thing. All three availability though, that's quite nice. And the armored ones are pretty similar. One is just slower than the other, so yeah, just take the BTR. Well, this has 2 more hit points, so I guess you might want to take this actually. And then yeah, the class Xenia that you get in all normal divisions. Infantry tab is bringing a good bit of interesting units here. We get some old Maxim machine guns, we get some old Dushkas, World War II vintage here, or even World War I vintage kind of thing, as they have weaker stats for that as well, but they're also a bit cheaper, so it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. We have PKMs here as well, which are 5 points more expensive here than the Maxim. Maxim also has Reservists, so, and then we have an AA Dushka as well, which also is old vintage. As you can see on the thing itself, it is a World War II kind of vintage weapon here as well. Has anti-helicopter range, but I'm not so sure that with 1200 that is really effective. If it would be 1400, it might be interesting. If it would be more, it could be quite decent, but with only that short range, it doesn't really help out much. And then we get into the Reserve Okrana, as they are a security unit with DPM and PPS 43s. The weapon loadout here not going super well together. There's a light machine gun with some submachine guns. Well, it can be good in CQC, but this unit in general is not great in CQC. It's only 15 points though, so with enough spam for 5-man spots, that could work out, but they themselves are not amazing. The PPS also not the greatest stats here if you look at the accuracy and so on, so obviously also World War II vintage, so it goes to say, I'd say this is not a strong unit, but it is priced to maybe still come around as a decent spam unit here nonetheless. Okrana VMF, the Marine Okrana variant, this one is pretty chunky. 14 men for 55 points, that is really solid. You don't get anything really outside of the 14 men. You get a one light machine gun. You don't get any AT weapons. You don't get any extra firepower. But Resolute and Security and 14 men, that is a pretty good squad. So I would say 55 points, just as a beefy squad going around, that one actually can do its job. And then we come to important units in this, the military police. We start with the Commandantura, which come in the BTR Commandantura that also has the military police trait. So that is pretty interesting. The Commandantura, the classic one that we have in all the other Soviet divisions as well, for AKs. But the BTR is the interesting part here. Costs you 45 points for it though, so you really pay for the military police trait. But this unit could be really important for the tank there. And then we have the Command Ushlenia with SVD and PKMs, so this is the same as in KDA, renamed from the Zagoradiat. KDA is named the same. Really good squad, and really important with the military police trait around all these reservists here that you have in this deck. Pulmachiki, the reserve, coming with the reservist trait as well, but 3 PKMs for 30 points. If you get a military police around, this is pretty nice. You get reserve BTR 152 as well for 15 points. That is potentially maybe interesting as well. But having this firepower is the real interesting part for 30 points. Like, if you can get the Reservists trade off them with Commandanturas, they are pretty solid. And if they come in a big wave, this could actually be a lot of firepower against other infantry. But let's see what else we got here. Reservist commodity has, yeah, it's 8-man squad with a RPG. And yeah, outside of that, the RPG is not the greatest. 50 points, 8-man, that is decent, but it is a reservist unit, so it's still suffering the same issues. 3 availability on an infantry leader is not always nice though, so I would say they are okay. Not the greatest we ever seen on an infantry leader, but for sure not the worst either. And then we have Reservisti, which is an 8-man squad with a decent RPG, a reservist. 30 points as well. You get the you lose some rifles, but you get the RPG, so solid trade-off there. And then the Przeciwniki with a really terrible RPG too. And a Mosin Nagant, a DPM, and an AKM. 10-man squad is pretty solid. Sniper rifle, the Mosin is not amazing, but it still stuns quite decently. Good suppression and so on. So these guys in waves can for sure be scary. 12 availability, 35 points. They do an okay job at that job. The RPG won't ever kill anything. It will stress things out though. The suppression is important, so that other things then potentially can kill those guys. So the Przeciwniki are still a fine unit here. And we come to the old recoilless rifle here. The Reserve beat 11. Okay damage, terrible accuracy. Okay range. Rate of fire is not great either. 35 points though. The stats are somewhat okay, but not great. So I'm not sure I want to take this, especially when you then also have to consider that Reservist trait comes on top of this and reduces the accuracy, reduces the rate of fire, increases the aim time. Like, all of that leads to big problems for the B11, so I don't think you want to take them. ATGM teams without Reservist, but it's only a Fagot, so it's not amazing, but it gets the job done. And yeah, you get 2 cards of these, so ATGMs you can get a decent amount. Infantry slots in general, relatively cheap, only 1 3-cost slot right at the end, so the rest you can fill. And then the Motostrelkis, the classic ones that we know from all the other divisions, 1 in BTR 60, 1 in BMP 1, so the vehicles that you get are not great. This BMP 1 is also the really old variant of the BMP 1, so no smoke, a Malyutka, but you get it for cheap, and that is the nice part. And you get a nice cheap ATGM vehicle. Though with Malyutka M and no smoke, it's not a good IFV here, but it's priced for that as well. So really, this infantry tab is all about bringing the numbers, and it does that pretty okay. Like, these units here are all priced decently. They're not priced super aggressively for the most part, but if you can play the military police game nice, the reservists are really solid to use, and the Motostrelkis here give you some baseline to fall back onto, which is quite a fine. And then the Saperi here, the reserve Saperi, 8-man squad unfortunately only, but gets TNT here, and this one 8-man squad with a flamethrower, gets no good machine gun or anything, gets 2 of the submachine guns. I'm not sure this really works out, especially with Reservist, where you get stunned down quicker and so on. Like, the flamethrowers already have an insanely long aim time of 4 seconds, so that getting longer because you already got shot and so on, like, the damage output of these won't be amazing. You don't want to have Reservist trade on your CQC units, so the Saperis I'm not a big fan of. I would just run normal infantry instead. Artillery tab has some funky stuff as well. We start with some classic mortars in reserve form here. Some 120 and 82mm mortars, both with limited range because old. And the PM43 here. Quite the old mortar for sure. And then reserve D1 Decent howitzer, but short range. Has some direct fire capabilities, but those are not great. A rate of fire only 3 because it's an old gun as well, so that's for howitzer. Not so great, but it's only 80 points for big HE, 152 millimeter. Like that's the interesting part of this. But the accuracy is not great with 12 kilometer max range, because the higher the range, the more accurate the guns get, with how range scaling works as well and so on. And the rate of fire is pretty abysmal, so even for 80 points, especially with Reservists reducing the rate of fire and so on even further, it's questionable. Then you get the BS3 1mm gun that kind of can hold up as an anti-tank gun as well, which was one of its main original roles back in the day. Yeah, 45% accuracy, 16 pen. It has 20 kilometer range on the 100mm gun as well, though. It has decent rate of fire of 5 here. The HE output, though, is on the other side then not so amazing. And yeah, you get your classic D30s as well, the 122 millimeters that are not amazing either. But yeah, this one actually being a bit more accurate, having the same rate of fire though and less HE. It's the same price, so it kind of really is built up to be an AT gun as well, and you don't want to do that double roll thing really with these kind of units. So I would just go for the D30, and even that I wouldn't really do because the good part is down here. We start with the B4M, which is a World War II vintage gun as well, and this one has a lot of HE. It only has a rate of fire of 2 per minute, so that is not so great, but the first shot already might do a good amount of damage here of the 203mm gun. And then we have the BR5M with 6.78 HE. Issue is still that the blast radius is not the most amazing, and it has a terrible range of only 10,000 meters, so its accuracy is pretty terrible as well. So I rather would take the B4 over the BR5M. But it kind of nukes everything that it hits. It just is a bit too much of a roulette for me to really enjoy. And then we have the Barrack that comes in with 130mm cannon here that also has relatively quick fire, 6 rounds per minute, 130mm gun. So that is pretty good. Accuracy with the range is pretty good as well. And the damage, 130mm, not amazing, but it gets the job done. Autoloader, quick moving unit is quite nice here. 180 points, not the cheapest for sure, but it can move after firing. It fires quickly, and the damage is somewhat decent. So not quite as good as the higher caliber autoloader self-propelled units, but on its own still quite good, as it has a slightly better rate of fire as well. And then we have an old rocket launcher with the BM24M. Not the most amazing either. Range is okay though, but yeah, the rockets themselves, they fire quite slowly, and the HE output is okay, but not amazing. No cluster or so in here, and yeah, this is pretty expensive for that. So that brings us to the tank tab, and here we get the best unit in this division in my eyes, the IS-2M. And yeah, 40 points. It got 9 frontal armor, 6 side armor, 4 rear. So 9 frontal armor, actually okay. It has the reservist trait. It has a 15 pen gun, but the rate of fire and the accuracy, especially if you consider it being a reservist, is the issue. It has 3 machine guns though, so it can really help out close range, fire support wise as well. And yeah, the main gun, 1925 meter range, 15 pen. It's okay. It's okay. If you get these guys in numbers, and you can get them in numbers of 40 points, they actually do a decent job, and the 9 survivability is nice. Bigger issue here really also is the speed. 35 kmh off-road, 75 on-road. The on-road speed is okay, the off-road speed, especially with getting slowed down by reservists, can be quite brutal. Motostrelki, the reservist here, coming along. The other stats we already know. Not great, but can be helpful in a pinch when you just need ATGMs flying towards the enemy. 100mm gun here. The KSM 65. has a solid rate of fire. The range is okay, but not great. If this would have more range, it would be really helpful. And the 16 pen is okay. It doesn't have any AA capabilities, unfortunately, so it's only an anti-tank gun. At least it has good stealth, but doesn't move fast away, and it has HE shells as well, so it can help out against infantry. But I'm not convinced that this one will be great. 55 points is relatively cheap, but you nearly get a T-54 reservist here for that, and I think he'd rather want to do that, even though it has a bit less pen, but it is more mobile. You get reserve T-55 AK leaders as well, and then T-54B here as a reservist unit. We have seen the T-54 before with these Germans, and here it has the same stats. It gets 11 frontal armor, which is okay, 14 pen, but the reservist rate does hurt here, though 60 points is relatively cheap. Reservist T-55A with a slight discount on the otherwise well-known T-55 as well, 16 pen here, and yeah, these one here, heat rounds, these kinetic with 16 pen, and then we get the T-55A OBR 81, which has reservist as well, but it gets smoke rounds, and it gets slightly more range, and slightly better accuracy as well. So for 15 points, that's a quite good upgrade, and you can get quite a lot of these. The availability per card is good, and the price is pretty fair as well. And with smoke, the reservist doesn't quite matter as much, as you can at least escape and recover afterwards. But it's still obviously a big hit to the efficiency of this unit. TO-55 here, coming around as the first non-reservist tank. And then we have the T-55 AM1, which is a pretty okay tank. It has the HGMs, it has the frontal armor, so it is in a pretty okay state. 2100 meter main gun only, but that doesn't matter really if you have 2800 meter range HGM. For HE, the 2100 is more than enough, and for AT you usually want to use the good ATGM anyways. 2800 meter, relatively fast, 18 pen, that is really nice. 60% accuracy is actually quite nice as well. So these are really solid tanks. 140 points, you get 2 cards. They do the job quite decently. And then you get a leader for these guys as well, without the ATGM, as per usual for the leader tanks. Recon is pretty limited in what the choices you get, but it has quite okay units, though the slots here are pretty rough as well. We first get the Alouette in Soviet service, the K1 Hightech bought from the Indians. It's an okay recon helicopter with the reservist. If it loses that, it might be... it doesn't really matter actually. It's an okay recon helicopter, does the job. Rajetka here, coming with the RPG, coming with a BTR 40 with a 7mm as an option. It has optics as well, or Ural, also that normal Rajetka. And then we have the BTR 40A with two 40mm that also can be used against helicopters. So this is nice for deploy AA. And it can shred infantry quite nicely as well. The anti-aircraft range, not so important here, but being able to help out against helicopters, being able to help out against infantry, and having very good optics helps these guys out quite nicely. So BTR 40A, for 40 points, quite solid. And then Reserve Rajetka with 8 men, but Reservist rate can come in the BTR 40 as well. And a mediocre RPG. 40 points is an okay price though, but with the reservists, they won't win the fights, they're just there to be more chunky reservists, but that's kind of what you need for the big wave pushes, so yeah, similar to KDA here, you just want to move forward with this deck, and having some chunky recon that can survive a bit is nice. BM1K is nice as well. Exceptional optics here on these guys help out quite a bit spotting enemies as well. AA tab, a lot of old stuff as well. Reserve Strela 3 is the start there. Not great against helicopters, not great against aircraft. With Reservists, the accuracy goes even further, so not a good manpad, but at least it's cheap. At least the availability is decent. And with one level of veterancy, it might be okay. It's set to ZSU 23-2. Standard little AA gun here. Has decent anti-helicopter range. Has decent ground range as well. Stats here in general might still change into the live build. The 57mm AA gun here coming around with decent price as well, only 30 points. But yeah, anti-helicopter range, anti-aircraft range is pretty okay as well. And then we have the KS-30 130mm gun here, which comes with good anti-helicopter range, but not great. And it is pretty slow. Has anti-infantry capabilities actually. No anti-tank rounds here. It says anti-tank, but it's purely anti-infantry currently. And then anti-aircraft range, but with the high aim time and so on, and the low accuracy, this is quite a gamble. 60 points is pretty cheap though, so with the HE, it might be worthwhile. Then we have the Urals with the ZPU-4 on the rear. Not the greatest gun, the lower range against helicopters here. You get the same, for the same price you can get a recon unit. And the recon unit can be forward deployed. The recon unit has a bit less HE, but it also has the better optics and so on, so I would rather take those than the Urals here. And then we have the most important AA unit, the Krug, with its one-shot capabilities, with 13 damage, 6,000 meters range, low accuracy. It's the roulette unit, but if you hit real good, and that's the important part. Helicopters, you get Mi-8 MTs and Mi-8 MTVs, both not great. The Mi-8 MT rocket with the 57mm we already know. You get a lot of those, but they're not amazing. And then this thing here has a lot of rockets as well, and it also has some ATGMs, but those are only Falanga Ps, which are pretty slow, and you get some 12mm. They don't really matter either though. So yeah, the Falanga P at least with 20 pen can do a bit of damage, but that's about it there. The AirTap is more interesting. You start with MiG-23 ML with the loadout being as the shotgun fighter, and then we have Su-15 with 3 missiles that can fire simultaneously. So you only get one of each of these two here, so you only get 4 missiles in general on this thing. So it will run out of missiles quite quickly. The accuracy is not amazing, but also not terrible. One is fire and forget, one is guided. So interesting little loadout here. The guided one having a bit more range. Then the second one has a gun and 2 of the infrared missiles. So a bit more consistent here. Slightly less firepower on the first shot. But the Su-15 outside of that, pretty fast. Terrible turn radius. Low ECM. 10 hit points though. 155 points. It's a fair price. And then we have Su-25s here with the Rocket 2 variant. We saw 25th already with some extra big rockets here. So that can bring a lot of damage. HE, cluster, and AT. So all we already know. KH-25 ML here on these guys. And then the most important plane here, the T-10K3 with 2 R-27s. So that is a lot of long-range firepower. It gets 8 missiles in total. 2 less than the S-27, but still with 6 long-range missiles that also can fire simultaneously. It is really, really strong. And these are 55% accuracy as well. So they hit pretty consistently. It still gets the 30mm gun. So this thing here really is absolutely amazing. It might be the best fighter in the game now. F-15 most likely still a bit better, but it's close. It's close. It only has 30 ECM. Its speed is not the most amazing, but the missile loadout here is pretty great. So this thing really does rock. So yeah, this is the division. Let me know down below what you think of it. And yep, I think it's a pretty similar experience to KDA, and I like KDA, so I'm pretty sure I will enjoy this one. As you get your missile tank, you get some cheap tanks, you get a lot of infantry, you get decent artillery. Recon is limited, AE is okay. You don't quite get the book capabilities of the Krug, but it still does a good job. And the air tap actually quite solid as well, especially with its slot being quite fair. Though you don't get any good bombers, but SU-25s in numbers. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you all in the next one, where we will go over the American New Division.